And welcome to another edition of Anthony and Ari Unfiltered, a weekly radio show with former Congressman Anthony Esposito and Inspector General, Department of Labor, in conversation with Assemblyman Ari Brown on the hot button issues of the day. Here now are your hosts.
Hey, Zeb, thanks. Another great show ahead of us. Congressman, I just came back from D.C., your old stomping grounds. I have to tell you, there isn't a person I met that didn't sing your praise.
Thank
From
you very much.
RFK Jr. to your colleagues, the Congress people. Anthony D'Esposito, you are like the hero of Washington. And I find that wherever I go, you really are a superstar. And I'm so excited, and everybody's so excited about your next role and roles in the future. A young guy like you, soon you'll be president, and you'll remember all of us. I have to say, I was so pleasantly surprised at how clean Washington, D.C. has become. No homeless. There wasn't a speck of paper on the ground. Immaculate. You felt safe walking. Why? I can't even understand why. I do understand why. Places like Chicago and San Francisco and you name it, fighting New York, fighting the president for doing the same thing.
It's tough to understand. I mean, I think, what it comes down to is a lot of them just have Trump derangement syndrome, right? They don't want anything that President Trump puts his finger on to be part of their legacy. But what it comes down to is, as someone who spends a ton of time in Washington, D.C., I was there a couple times last week. I mean, the work that President Trump and the administration have done. I mean, when you talk about, and we could talk about a lot of the promises that he made during the campaign, but one of them was to make America safe again. And when you start, and your bullseye is the nation's capital, the place where not only lawmakers come to govern, but I mean, millions of people visit throughout the year from every corner of not just this beautiful nation, but across the globe. World leaders, everybody comes to DC to either see the sights, to do business, to be part of, watch their democracy in action. And for far too long, it really turned into a dump. And President Trump said, "I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not going to let the woke agenda of the left and the radicals that are running DC to allow our beautiful nation's capital to become." Really the armpit of America, so to speak. And what did he do? He took action into his own hand. He put federal law enforcement professionals on the ground. And I will tell you, speaking with a lot of the Metro PD and the cops that are on the ground, maybe not the bosses, because some of them are, they're tied to the administration that is DC, but the rank and file of these police departments, they love the collaboration. They love the idea that they could go out on the street.
Mayor at first didn't. I know now everybody's giving her credit for going over. Now but I'd like to hear her espouse President Trump's greatness.
That would be nice.
I have to tell you something. The security was unbelievable. I didn't want to take my family there. Shira asked, "Let's go." I said, "I don't know." Now I'm looking forward to going again and going often. Really amazing. That leads into one of the subjects I'd like to discuss. I know you had posted and discussed the new legislation to get rid of that crazy cashless bail in D.C. Need to do that in New York.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's explain to our listeners here on WNEW and WSNR what cashless bail is about once again and why it's so destructive to our communities.
Yeah, and I think that, unfortunately, New York under Andrew Cuomo and then Kathy Hochul, we were, probably we were the ones that started this mess. And really what it does is it takes away, at the core, it takes away judges' discretion, right? It basically says that even if you wanted to put bail in place, you can't if there's certain benchmarks or criteria that are met. And the Democrats have argued, well, it hasn't made our state less safe. The Democrats have argued that it hasn't created a revolving door of justice. Those are just, it's nonsense. It's BS. The fact is that when
increase the recidivism.
Yeah, you see people, they're released out into the public only to commit more crimes, and we're seeing more and more victims and more crimes, and really the criminal justice reform as a whole. I mean, this legislation was specific to cashless bail, but I mean, you talk about the discovery laws. I mean, that the idea in New York State, and I don't want to veer off course too much, but to think about the fact that the state legislature and the governor really have put criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens. To think that under the new discovery law that the Democrats have put in place, that God forbid someone in your home is raped and there is someone caught for that crime, you as a parent have to give the perp and his or her attorney access to your home so that they can view the crime scene again. Think about that. I mean, that is, you talk about re-victimizing the victim. I mean, it's insane. So again, and so what they did in yesterday is obviously, or maybe not obviously, but in Washington, D.C., there's an interesting dynamic of oversight that Congress plays, and they have the ability to overturn the laws or implement laws in the nation's capital. And so cashless bail was put into place by the city. And I believe the legislation that passed yesterday was authored by Elise Stefanik. It was put onto the floor.
Elise the other day.
Good. Yeah.
Really dynamic. And who knows? We have a lot of great candidates.
That we do. She's a great leader. And but the legislation put forth yesterday reverses the disastrous policies of Washington, D.C. and eliminates cashless bail. We'll see where it goes
and
from
the
here.
Dems pushed back or and
I mean,
get out.
No, I mean, I think right now it's going to move on to the next steps, and we'll see where it goes. But I think that it is a great talking point for here in New York State, where especially in 2026 we have a gubernatorial election, and I think Kathy Hochul, she's getting pushback from every corner of her party. And who knows? I mean, I was reading an article this morning that they're expecting nearly 45% of the members of Congress in the Democratic Party are going to be primary.
Yes, I saw
by I guess what would be the Socialist Party.
So, Congressman, you segued off into New York a little bit. Where have you and our past Congress people been on cashless bail and these reforms needed?
Well, from day one, I have said we should repeal cashless bail. I think it's the probably the most idiotic thing that the Democrats have done. I mean,
your colleagues, and I don't mean your Republican colleagues.
Oh, the Democrats, listen, they have done everything they can to try to say that cashless bail has actually made our community safer. And I always argue with facts. And the fact is that criminal justice reform, because you can't just talk about cashless bail, it's really a package deal. And what criminal justice reform has done is not only has it created this revolving door of justice, not only has it allowed victims to be re-victimized, but it has also taken, I mean, when people see, when the public sees that people are not being prosecuted for crimes, when people see that the judges have no discretion, what happens? People don't call 911. And that's part of this.
Let me interrupt you for a second. They don't not only call 911, but now under Mamdani, you're going to have to call a social worker,
right? Which is even more ridiculous. And the fact that I mean, he's backpedaling now because I think he realizes even a communist like him realizes how ridiculous it is. But to think that you are going to allow, or you're going to put into the hands of a 911 operator, and I will tell you, as someone who has been on the other side of that radio, there are days, or every day in the New York City Police Department, with the exception of your partner and the team that you're working with, you have no better friend on the street than the other side of that radio. A quality 911 operator is, I mean, we used to go visit Central just to say thank you, bring them coffee, bring them something.
I have a very close and dear friend that at the 911
because when you have someone that could provide critical information in a hurry, when you have someone on the other end of that mic that knows your voice and knows that when your voice is a different pitch, something is about to really bad going to happen. When there's a voice at the other end of the 911 operator that can control the radio, there's a lot of people that are emotional and they can calm everything down and they can give you the information that you need. But to think that Zohran Mamdani wants to put into their hands that when a 911 call comes over, they choose whether the NYPD is going to respond or a social worker is going to respond. It is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, just use domestic violence, for example. Someone responds to a domestic violence call, which very well could be an argument between a husband and a wife, a husband and a husband, a wife and a wife, whoever it is. It's an argument. You know how quick that those can escalate into murder or shootings or assaults. And how would a 911 operator know that?
You're right. So that leads into my main question. I see that Tisch is still going to be the commish. She's agreed. I don't want to back into a corner. What do you feel about how she's done? I read that Bratton said she did a fairly good job in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. And she's expressed that she has some reservations about agreeing with the future mayor-elect.
So I think that a couple of things. I think that some of the former commissioners are going to be praiseworthy because they want to continue to have access and influence into what happens in the New York City Police Department, which is fair, right? Everyone wants that. I think Jessica Tisch has been a good manager. I think she's done a good job in the face of what really has been a disaster in New York City. I mean, to manage the troops, 30,000 troops in the wake of probably one of the most historic elections we've seen in New York City history, right? I mean, it's one of the biggest turnouts, I think, with the exception of Mayor Lindsay. It's probably one of the biggest turnouts we've seen. So obviously the city of New York was engaged. It is the epicenter of visits from world leaders. It's the epicenter of athletics. It's the epicenter of fashion. I mean, everything happens in New York City. Business. Commerce, trade, business, finance, right? It is central. And I think that she has done a good job of keeping the politics as much as she can out of the New York City Police Department and to manage with what she has. And listen, she was thrown some.
Why do you think he kept her? Why would Mamdani keep somebody? Because she's a woman. He wanted to find a little balance.
I don't think it's the woman thing. I think that he realizes that she is a good manager, and I will be very honest in saying I don't use the term crime fighter because I think in order to be a crime fighter, I think you have to be a former member of law enforcement. Now, I think she's done a good job. I think
What did she do beforehand?
Well, she was the commissioner of sanitation, but before that, she did for many years work in the NYPD. She was hired by Commissioner Ray Kelly, who I would argue is one of the finest police minds in this world. But she was hired, and she really was the brains behind bringing the NYPD into the century when it comes to technology, when it comes to putting our paperwork into computer and not typing on typewriter anymore, really bringing the NYPD into this social media world. Like, she had a big play in that. And I think she is a good manager. She's very smart. I mean, you can't put that, you give her that. She's very smart. And I think she's also humble enough to know that she has people in certain positions. She has a chief of detectives who has spent nearly 40 years being an investigator in the New York City Police Department, and she lets him do his job.
Who was that?
Chief Kenny. So I think she has the humility to realize that there are people in certain places. You have Rebecca Weiner, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism, who I have sat down with at least a dozen times with other members of Congress who have spent their lives in counterterrorism. And we walked out of meetings and they say, that woman is one of the sharpest people I've ever met in my life. So I think that she has the ability to let people shine where they need to. We're going to see why he kept her. I think that he knows that there's a real narrative out there. I mean, and we see it from the numbers going through the pension section that there's going to be a mass exodus of law enforcement professionals, and that institution.
I think that's something that he wants at the end of the day, to put all the crazy lunatics. And I think he wants a mass exodus from the residents from the city.
Yeah,
this is what these crazy Islamists do. They try to take over a city, push, defund the police, so to speak. Look for the mass exodus and bring in their own people. At
the end of the day, I mean, we have to fill the ranks. And I think just as many people are.
Or not.
Yeah, or not. But I mean, then you really turn the city over. And perhaps that is what he wants. But I would have to, taking my government hat off and putting my political hat on for a second, I think that Commissioner Tisch has, ambitions. I think that she's someone who is smart. She has played the game. She's young. I know there's chatter that perhaps she wants to be mayor one day. So maybe this is an opportunity for her to stay with the administration and get to a turning point where she says, I can't take this anymore. This is where you and I differ far too much, and tender her resignation. And maybe that then leads her.
A springboard. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Before I get on to the next subject, listening to Anthony and Ari Unfiltered and WNEW and WSNR. I don't know what you're allowed to say about your next position or not, but yesterday, me and some of my colleagues met with the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. What a wonderful person. I absolutely love her.
And so nice.
And yes, and she explained, and I had read about that in the past, that obviously they're going to be decommissioning the Department of Education, but much of it is going to be going into the Department of Labor. As the father of 7, grandfather to almost 6, education and who's going to be managing that is very important to me. Have you had any discussions about the education component about the Department of Labor and what your role may be?
So I think that the goal, at least the way that I understand it, is to although move some of the education components into the Department of Labor, it would also be, the real goal is to put the states right in charge of education. I think that that's really the goal, because
which sounds right, except when
we live in New York.
Except when we live in New York, exactly.
Exactly.
Because
So
crazy stuff.
So we will see. I think it's a work in progress. Obviously, it's a massive department to dismantle at a rapid pace. But I think that Secretary McMahon has done a really great job of highlighting the deficiencies of the Department of Education. And
Which I think she said like 90% of urban students are basically illiterate. Could you imagine? When I was a kid, we learned how to
that's
read
why
by
charter
phone.
schools are becoming so successful.
Right. And I have to tell you something. When I used to be the vice chair of the IDA, we did the finance structure for so many of the charter schools, and the success, and you heard from parents, the success of these schools. Yet I get a massive amount of pushback from the teachers union, massive. She'll never endorse me because of how I feel about charter schools.
They'll never endorse you anyway. Forget about the charter schools.
That's true. I was got another 100% in my conservative party calculation.
But if I could say something real quick, because I think it's important, especially where we live and the people we talk to and the people we represent. I think what's important is that the teachers union, thankfully, doesn't represent a majority of the teachers. Me and you have tons of supporters.
But the teachers say to me, "Why am I paying my dues?" I don't agree, but they don't speak out. They let those.
But I think we have tons of support from teachers that are working as hard as they can to do the right thing.
My daughters are teachers.
Well, I don't know if they support you, but
they definitely support me. But again, they don't do anything about the Randy Weingartens of the world, who look really not to hurt,
because
not to help our students.
She's a powerful, dangerous human being,
and anything and everything to hurt our students. That's exactly what she and a lot of the unions do.
Yeah.
There was a purpose to the teachers union at one time. I don't see the purpose of at this point. Getting back to the charter school just for a moment, when the parents would come to me, this was probably almost 20 years ago, and say, kids from Hempstead and certain areas, certain communities that didn't have the best education coming out of their public schools, and now the kids are thriving. Some of the kids may even go to a school like Chaminade, or some of they have education like they've never seen before. Why the major pushback from the unions? It's just, I understand why.
Yeah.
They have to keep the strength and power amongst themselves, but to hurt the students.
But I also think that and I've spoken to individuals that run and help fund charter schools, and I think that similar, because you mentioned the IDA, and one of my biggest criticisms of the IDA has always been that they should be educating the public more as to what IDAs do and how they work. But similarly to charter schools, I think the charter schools need to really take on a marketing campaign and talk about the cost per pupil of what they do, of what public school does, of what
I spend like $40,000 a student deal or something.
Right, and also the graduation rate, and I think that it's important, especially in the world that we live in now. I don't know if you recently read, there was a story that had come out that Ford Motor Corp, they have 5,000 jobs, 6-figure jobs that can't be filled, and these are mechanics, people in the Ford plant putting and assembling cars, working on the technology that has to do with the future of Ford. And one of the problems is that, and I think it is probably highlighted here in Nassau County, especially on the South Shore, is that there's this stigma that if you don't go to college, that you're not going to have a successful life. And I think that the charter schools are a perfect example where many people, not only do they go to four-year colleges, but they go to schools to learn a trade. Vocational schools.
As you know, I swing a hammer for a living.
And that's critically important. And I think that we need to find ways to make sure, and I think President Trump is doing exactly that, because he realizes, I mean, talk about somebody who governs with common sense. He realizes that these jobs, I mean, if we want to turn around and say, well, we want to be America first and we want to make sure that we're keeping everything right here in America, well, then we need to make sure that young people have the resources they need to keep these jobs right here. And I mean, you think about someone can go to a vocational school and listen, you know way better than me, you work on cars, you've done this, but I think the days of becoming a general mechanic and working on many different types of cars is over with the technology, right? I mean, many mechanics
even for me
focus on one manufacturer, and that's where they stand. And I think that's what's happening, is that a lot of our vocational schools, while they provide a great education, they're not funded enough to be advanced tech.
But for carpentry and HVAC and plumbing, there is, which leads to my next subject, and it was a great segue. Nassau Community College. I have to tell you, when I was a kid, Nassau Community College, the kids who didn't do well in school, they went to Nassau, graduated with pride with an associate's degree. There was nothing to be ashamed of. They went to school. It was wonderful. But under Maria Conzatti, Dr. Conzatti, she's reshaped the school in a very different way, that when I go there, I said, wow, this is impressive. There's vocational services there. You could become an HVAC mechanic. You can, even on the professional level, they now have a 4-year nursing school, from what I understand. The campus, the face of the campus is very different. The buildings, the structure, the whole institution is very different. And yet, someone who's turned around the whole dynamics economically and educationally is not getting the support of SUNY. I got a call from one of King's assistants, keeps calling me. Oh, how come you wrote all this letter, this note, and posted things about Chancellor King? Why? Here's a guy that after a year of all the anti-Semitism in school woke up, always late to the game. He's very late to the game now when it comes to Dr. Conzatti. I don't know how you feel. We haven't discussed it. She has my full support. Many of my colleagues fully support her. We can't lose someone like Maria Conzatti from Nassau Community College on Long Island.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think what it comes down to is when they don't, when these individuals don't fit the mold that SUNY is looking for, which we know is not the.
What is that mold?
Well, it's certainly not one that are putting the students first. It's about putting an agenda first. It's about putting this woke indoctrination agenda forward. And, the fact that we have someone that's, actually going to work and doing what's right by the students first. And it sounds crazy, right?
But economically turn that school around as well.
And she's being hurt for it.
Yeah, I think we saw the same thing happening at the hospital, at Nassau's hospital as well, where the state took over. I think probably that was for a different reason. Gave the governor an opportunity to give away at NewMac a lot of jobs, thousands of jobs, and things like that. But
I also think one of the big parts about that is there's an opportunity for probably a pretty, a land sale that could really change the face of some of those communities.
I never heard that. I didn't know that. And I'm surprised to hear that. That's an interesting dynamic that I wasn't even considering.
Remember that Governor Hochul, one of the things that she's been pushing so hard for here in Nassau County and on Long Island, and because you're up in Albany fighting it, and we're fighting it, and Republicans have, and honestly, some Democrats have too, but the fight has been Republican, where she has done her best to try to take away our local zoning rights in villages and towns. She has made it very clear that she wants to put high density housing in communities and completely disregard, our quality of life, disregard the way our communities look. And I wouldn't be surprised, I'm not the detective in this relationship, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, you actually are the detective.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of this and the overall strategy of the governor and her team was that perhaps they would eventually get rid of some of the land surrounding the hospital, which would be in her eyes, a great location for high density housing.
As Salozzo said to Don Carleone, she's not that clever.
We'll see.
But having said that though,
But people around her may be.
Right. And the people who are around her, the dynamic of that is vastly changing. I had read several places that maybe up to 40% of the state legislature and even federally may be primaried by the DSA, emboldened by Zoran Mandani's big win.
Absolutely.
I mean, Carl Hastie is shaking in his boots that he's going to lose.
Hakeem Jeffries already has a primary opponent.
Big time. And I heard Mandani's telling him not to do it. I don't believe that for a minute.
I think it's one of those cases where you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. But could you imagine? I'm thinking of the Assembly and the Senate, especially the Assembly. They're all going to be primary.
Absolutely.
The most liberal of my colleagues, all nice.
I think we're going to see our Democratic representatives here on Long Island be primary.
Yeah.
I think that Tom Suozzi and Laura Gillen probably will be primaried. And, if for the sake of the Republicans,
that would be good.
I hope it costs them a few $1 million a piece.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. I'm not sure how much time we have to go, but we're going to keep talking until Zev gets on the line and tells us not to. So
It's been a great show so far.
Yeah. So Washington, D.C. again. I have to tell you, and I'm not just saying because you're my good friend. Wherever I went, the first thing I said, Long Island.
That's very nice to hear.
Anthony. Most of your colleagues, the love, Lota, Garbarino, all of them have for you. Langworthy. You are so beloved, and they feel the loss of not having you there. They're excited to have you back in a different capacity.
Well, hopefully we get the band back together the way it should be.
I'm sure that'll happen sooner than
So
later.
what did you, I know that our good friend Mike Lawler did a late night tour with you guys. How was that?
That was unbelievable. I've been to the Capitol, years ago when I was a kid. Never took my kids there. The midnight tour was very nice, and on the way, who did we see escorting the Boy Scouts or no, not the Scouts, the cadets from West Point? I don't mean to denigrate the wonderful cadets. Tom Suozzi. Okay. He looked very humble.
He's had a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah, really humble.
No.
But we saw the old Supreme Court chambers.
Oh, very nice.
I'm a student of history.
Yeah. I saw you took a nice picture with the original doors of the Capitol building.
Right. And I know they reproduced in a different way. I'm a student of history, student of architecture. So I try to explain to people when I walk through my Capitol in Albany, I'm in the LOB, my legislative office, built in 69 and 70, brutalist, no architecture. And this is the mindset of the Mamdani people.
Yeah.
If you were to design, you're a young architect under 50, to design something traditional, you're considered non-creative. You're building something contrived. There's something beautiful about our American history that they took it from Greek revival, but our history is something that should be lauded and continued in our architecture of a home instead of these white and black homes that you see.
And you could go into the Capitol building. We both could probably go in there every day for the rest of our lives, and every day you'll find something new to talk about. You'll find out something new that you didn't know before. I mean, I don't know if Mike took you through the Hall of Columns, where historically, when columns are put in buildings, they always have the same
capital and base.
Or they have, and the top is usually the same
Ionic or Scamosa or something.
And in the Capitol building, the leaves are all different, representing agriculture from throughout the 50 states. I mean,
And you've been listening to Anthony and Ari Unfiltered.
All right, Zev, Anthony, it's been another great show.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. You've been listening to Anthony and Ari Unfiltered on WNEW 102.7 FM and WSNR 620 AM.
A blessed Thanksgiving, everyone.
Amen.
Okay.
Did I sing a song? Sing a song. All right.
So what's the plan for
great job, gentlemen. Great job.
Yeah. So we'll just do a rerun for next.